Thanks, Father John, and thanks for the invitation to be here at the parish. It's always quite awesome to be in this building where both Mary MacKillop and Eileen O'Connor both probably worshipped within these four walls. And before I start, has anyone lost what appears to be a scapula? It's been left on the lectern, so if it's yours, very nice. I have to say, I am more of a writer than an orator, so I am going to mostly read my remarks today. But I've left a shorter time for the prepared remarks, and I hope we can have some discussion at the end. So please store up any questions or comments. So how many times do you open a social media app and there's one of your friends out having a great time? They're either at a trendy bar or a restaurant, maybe at a concert or a festival, or traveling the world. Maybe you notice their new outfit looks great too. And have you ever subsequently noticed yourself feeling pressure to keep up with the Joneses? You too need to go out and have these experiences, or your life's a bit sad. Your phone will remind you constantly of desires that you might have, and then it will supply the means to fulfill them. First, it presents you with people living the life on Instagram or TikTok, and then it'll give you the means through the Amazon or Temu or Uber app to order that gadget, to order that outfit, order that meal, and get it delivered right to your door. And sometimes there's no subtlety about this at all. The link is actually embedded in the content itself. Now, by the way, this dynamic can actually extend to religious experiences too. Maybe it's your friends on pilgrimage to Rome, or walking the Camino, or at World Youth Day, and you feel your faith is missing something unless you too fly to Europe. What I want to share with you today is that not only are you not really missing out, but when you look closely, these experiences that are sold to us as a form of freedom are actually a drain. It's a drain on our ability to live a fulfilling life. And you're better off for not getting drawn into their siren song. So let's start with the obvious. Hanging out in Mykonos or eating out in Potts Point, does that bring you fulfillment? No. And I found a quote which I think says it best. I was going to have slides, but we had a tech issue, so I'll just read out what was going to be on the slides. The quote is, "A life of idle hedonism never brought out the best in anyone." A life of idle hedonism never brought out the best in anyone. You know where I got that from? The Economist. So you never know where wisdom will come from. Even The Economist, the magazine of business, understands that materialism isn't enough for people. People need purpose. Viktor Frankl famously spoke of man's search for meaning. I'm thinking people here have heard of Viktor Frankl. Nods, yep. For anyone who doesn't, he was a Holocaust survivor, and he noted that people who survived the Holocaust had some higher meaning that kept them going. People who lacked that sense of purpose saw no reason to keep living. So purpose is important, and Instagram and TikTok won't remind you of that. Another thing we need is relationship. And I don't just mean romantic relationships, just general deep connection with other people. The paradox of social media is that people are simultaneously more connected and lonelier than ever. How is that possible? We have paper-thin relationships with hundreds of people who we might have only met once, or maybe not at all. Psychologists will tell you that the human brain is wired for connection with a maximum of 200 people. That's the size of a large family clan. That's the maximum number of people who you can genuinely know. Within that, you can only have close relationships with a small number of people, and possibly only one. Who those people are is the topic for a whole other talk. But my point is just that we seek connection, close connection with other people. And yet we are constantly nudged towards finding meaning in things that we can purchase. Here's the thing about the message of materialism that comes at you every time you unlock your phone screen. You see people trying very hard to project that they are living their best life, and we're left to presume that that's what they're doing all the time in between their posts. It's not an accurate representation of people's lives, which are far more humdrum. And even though we know this, we still have an epidemic of mental health problems, exacerbated by constant exposure to these apparent but fundamentally fake lifestyles. Instagram is particularly bad in this respect. The influencers who make themselves so highly visible on that platform use their reach to endorse products. It's quite insidious. I've seen how the culture of that platform seeps into the minds of otherwise good people. Suddenly they feel the need to post updates daily or even several times a day when they're traveling abroad or every time they eat out. Now, I really don't need to know, let alone see what you had for brunch. Does it add value to my life? No. We ought to think about this as social media users ourselves. Instead of thinking of ourselves in our own image, think of the person on the other end. Is what I'm going to post going to add value to their life? And if it doesn't, maybe I should keep it to myself. The excessive consumption driven by social marketing, by Amazon, by Temu, by others, has consequences for other people. The products you order don't just materialize out of nowhere. In many cases, people making the goods, packing the parcels, serving the food, are being underpaid or otherwise exploited by the companies that they work for. And as Father just mentioned, Uber was one I know in some detail. The use of natural resources to make products ultimately has effects on people as well. A few of us here are old enough to remember the scandal of the Octedi mine, which was still is, a copper and gold mine in Papua New Guinea, which was owned by BHP. And what happened was in the highlands of Papua New Guinea, and as they washed through the ore that they were mining, the muddy water tailings that ran down from the highlands, turned the water muddy and ruined the watershed of the villages downstream. So not only did it take away the possibility of fishing, which is how people made their livelihood, but also it just spoiled the drinking water. Anyway, that was back in the late 90s. It was in the news all the time. But that's the invisible cost of our copper wiring, is the impact of some of these mining operations. There's myriad stories like these, and you've heard those elsewhere. For today, I want to pose a different question. So beyond a point, do things and experiences actually make you, the consumer, happy? The same culture in which food porn is a thing that celebrates indulging in sugary, fatty food, that same culture is one in which people are dying from their own excesses. More and more people are suffering from diabetes, dying from heart disease and alcoholism. The average Australian is overweight. Diet is one reason, and lack of exercise is the other, which I'll come to in a second. What is being presented as freedom is actually a trap, because your pursuit of more and more comes at a personal cost. And of course, it all costs money. Overseas travel is expensive. Houses in this city are very expensive. Keeping up appearances requires time and money that you could be investing in actual relationships. Let me use cars as an example of what I'm talking about. Having a car costs $15,000 a year in repayments and running costs. It might be more after recent inflation. Maybe it's $20,000 a year. So for the privilege of having a car, that's the first $27,000 of your income before tax. And what do we use it for? Mostly to drive to a job. So we're working to pay for a car, to get us to work, to pay for a car, to get us to work. Does anyone see the problem with this? I'll share my personal experience to illustrate. So back in 2016, I asked my family, why are we all spending 2 or more hours of our day driving across the city and back? So I cashed out my packaged company vehicle and moved here to Surry Hills, where I could walk to the office. Yes, Surry Hills is more expensive than the suburbs, but you know what? The difference in housing was exactly the same, dollar for dollar, as what I gained by giving up my car. And I have no regrets at all. In fact, I think it's one of the best decisions I ever made. Active transport is so much better for you. Walking for 30 minutes twice a day was so much better for me than sitting with my hands fixed to a steering wheel for an hour twice a day. Plus, I regained those 2 hours of every day to put to better use, to spend with my family and to be involved in the community. And plus, I get to live in this lovely part of the world. In the rare situations where I do need a second car, I can always use GoGet and rent one by the hour. And they are very rare. It's like once a month. Nowadays, I work, as Father mentioned, I work in the Archdiocese, which is in Leichhardt. So I don't walk, I ride my bike if it's sunny enough. And if it's not, I'll take the light rail right here and a bus. Again, it's a win, both in the sense that I don't have to pay for a car, but it's also a win in that I don't have to make an additional trip to drive to the gym and set aside additional time for exercise. because I'm otherwise spending my entire day either behind the wheel or behind a desk. Exercise gets built into the day. In short, my experience has been that choosing to live a low-impact life is actually far more fulfilling than running on the hamster wheel. People who work in personal finance call it lifestyle creep. Here's how it works. Basically, as soon as your income increases, you notice things that are within your reach. Things like having your own car, or taking out a mortgage on a Sydney property, or holidaying overseas every year. Next thing you know, you start to regard these things not as luxuries, but as essentials. That means that your higher income no longer gives you any gratification. You feel like you have to run faster and faster just to keep up. When people talk about lifestyle creep out in the secular world, they usually assume that income is the prime mover. So your income moves up and then your consumption follows. But maybe consumption is the prime mover. I need to have more, so therefore I need to earn more. Increasing income is not a bad thing, just maybe we don't need to increase it as much as we think. Beyond a certain point, increasing your income any further comes with trade-offs. You'll end up having less time for other people, or you'll accept a job doing work of dubious social value. Less time for other people, work of dubious social value. Hang on, didn't we say at the start, what people most value is relationships and purpose? And yet, high incomes makes you trade both of those things off. You know, sometimes when we go for a drive, and like my wife's, out into the eastern suburbs, and my wife's like, oh, look at all these houses. I always think to myself, you could still, doesn't matter how big your house is, you can still only sleep in one bed. You can still only eat 3 meals a day. No matter how well traveled you are, there's always going to be more places on your bucket list you can't get to. You just can't conquer them all. The simpler way to achieve happiness, instead of chasing all of those things, is to reduce desire. Okay, so far I've been picking on easy targets, like eating out or fast fashion. But you know what? Even edifying activities like reading and education have become commercialized and made way, way more expensive than they need to be. So consider liberal arts education. Liberal arts education courses cost $30,000 a year. Do you know how much studying the classics really costs? Nothing, not a cent. All the classics texts that you study in liberal arts are out of copyright. You don't have to pay for them. You can borrow them from the library, or you can download and listen to them as audiobooks for free on the LibriVox app. Okay, so that's only the texts. We still need teachers, right? Well, you can actually do online courses on all kinds of topics on edX for free. You only have to pay anything if you want a verified certificate. If you just want to learn for its own sake, it's free. Or you can also set up your own study circles. Again, free. I've been giving out a lot of free financial advice today. So what have we saved so far? $27,000 a year on a car, $100,000 on a liberal arts degree. Who knows how much on medical costs? Let's bring it back to the topic of this talk. So what is a Christian perspective on consumption? From its inception, our faith has taught the benefit of self-denial and going without. There has never been a moment in its history where the church has taught that indulging yourself, even in ways that aren't sinful per se, is a good thing. Let's just do a quick run through. Jesus in Matthew, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross. Jesus in Luke, none of you can become my disciple if you do not give up all your possessions. Paul in Corinthians, I discipline my body and make it my slave. Paul in Philippians, for his sake I've suffered the loss of all things, and I regard them as rubbish, in order that I may gain Christ. St. Augustine in the first millennium, a divided heart is an impure heart. Purifying the heart means denying oneself the pursuits and pleasures in things like food and drink, and overseas holidays. Paul of the Cross in the second millennium, be as eager to break your own will as the thirsty stag is to drink of the refreshing waters. Francis de Sales, his contemporary, the more one mortifies his natural inclinations, the more he renders himself capable of receiving divine inspirations and of progressing in virtue. If you think about it, the evangelical counsels of poverty, chastity, and obedience fly in the face of today's Insta culture. Poverty, I'm going to go without. Instagram, I'm going to have as much as I can. Chastity, I'm going to practice custody of the eyes. Instagram, I'm going to ogle the flesh pretty much every time I open the app. Obedience, I'm going to be disciplined and follow God's plan for me. Instagram, I'm free to do whatever I please in this moment. The church has in more recent times, so the examples I gave earlier were, out of the Bible and doctors of the church. The magisterium of the church in more recent times has urged us to consider the impact that lifestyles of affluence have on other people and on future generations. But the message is fundamentally the same. 30 years ago, the Catechism talked about moving away from a consumerist mentality to a mentality of solidarity, concern for the common good. Paragraph 2192. 10 years ago, Laudato Si talked about this problem of individualism. If we can overcome individualism, we will truly be able to develop a different lifestyle. Paragraph 208. And isolated individuals can end up prey to an unethical consumerism bereft of social or ecological awareness. Paragraph 219. Ultimately, Laudato Si calls us to move away from lifestyles of individualism and towards living well together. To wrap up, we all know about the virtue of going without as a moral discipline. The point I wanted to make today is that you don't need to consume to experience life. Consumption actually gets in the way of experiencing life because of lifestyle creep. Reducing consumption increases the space available for purpose and for relationships, for service of the other. Okay, this is hard to translate. My closing slide was going to be, if you're further reading, I'll just have to describe it to you. So there is a book available from the Mustard Seed bookstore in the Chancery called The Grace of Enough. The author is Hayley Stewart. I'm sure it's available on your favourite online bookseller as well. But you can also listen to Hayley Stewart for free. She's on The Voice podcast. And the other is Reform Wellness is a Catholic website that promotes health in body and spirit in an integrated way. In fact, I got the title of this presentation from Reform Wellness. And I just should also add that I heard about them from a presentation that Teresa gave at this lectern several years ago. So just bring it full circle. So anyway, that's all I had to cover in my prepared remarks, but I'd love to have a bit of discussion about it. So over to you.